As mentioned in one of the previous videos, I am going to redo another coat of the 1706 on top of all these parts. There's a little uneven here and there, and actually since then, because I didn't bag the parts like I did the command console, a couple of them have gotten scratched up. The only thing I'll note is that on this piece I had thought it was a little uneven up at the top, but that is going to be B, and all I have to do is the bottom strip right there. So, and this time, unfortunately I keep missing it, but I really want to do the transfer between colors and cleaning the airbrush, or at least how I do it, just to give you an idea. So what we'll do now is load up the airbrush with the 1706, which is already thinned, and then we'll go for the B once that is cured in a few hours. Alright, so in a previous video I had mentioned that I'm going to do another pass of the 1706, and the pieces were a little bit uneven here and there. It would definitely show up, and because I didn't bag them like I did the command console right there, one of the walls actually got scratched up in the last couple days. You wouldn't think just sitting there with nothing going on it wouldn't be able to do that, but apparently it does happen. And the only other thing I'll note is that on the freezer walls, I don't have to worry about the top part for the 1706. It's just that little bottom runner right there that has to be painted. So that's going to make that nice and easy. And another thing I keep missing, whether it's the card running out or the batteries or whatever, is transferring in between colors with the airbrush. So hopefully I'll get that down this time. So let's load up the 1706. You definitely got to understand that I am not a master with the airbrush. And I'm just muddling along basically the same as any of you random folk may be as well. Definitely a little spillage there. That's the only downside to this paint mixer. Otherwise I really love it. Getting the paint all frothy like that may be a bad thing too, but I do not know. I suppose that could cause some very minor and small air bubbles inside the airbrush flow. However, I expect that they would be so small and moving so relatively fast overall that it's really not going to make that much of a difference. But it's definitely something I'd like to avoid, generally speaking. Let's just throw the whole jar in there, since it's already pre-thinned. One thing you'll notice is that I took the back cap off of the airbrush, which is this piece here and this one here. All this does is protect that area, and what this does is act as a stop. So once this is locked in, this piece locks into this, and then that limits the amount of travel that the trigger will get to keep your brush either fine or thick, depending on what you want out of it. And another thing is that if you set the needle further back, you'll get a much wider flow than if you set it far forward. So what I've done here is set it fairly well back, because basically I just want a really big flow of color going over everything as big as possible. There's nothing fine to do about this. So let's get to it. Oh yeah. On this back room piece, what I need to do is make this back wall a little more even, especially right in the middle there. I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but basically because I'm shooting into the piece, all the paint and fumes are just getting kicked straight back into my face. What I'm going to do here is just give it a really good dousing, since it's already got one coat. Angling the part to the light will definitely give you a better idea of where the paint is and where it still needs to go. It's looking much better already. And as far as painting technique goes, or airbrush technique rather, this is definitely not an ideal situation going on here. Normally what I'd like to be doing is just like a spray brush going across like that, but there's so many little nooks and crannies in here that's not really feasible. The outside is good, but another coat never hurts. Unless it's primer, in which case you'll totally lose all your details. I think that's pretty much my biggest problem, is that I get stuck in the primer phase, where I'm sanding and priming and sanding over and over and trying to get every little detail fixed, and all of a sudden details on the model itself will simply disappear. What do I want to do next? Let's hit this piece. This inside section of the wall here isn't really visible, but I would like it to be nice and consistent across the board. Of course, another important thing is to keep the brush parallel to the surface. I don't always do that myself, but I do try, and it will give you a much nicer it turns out this paint is really thin, so I got to lay it on a little thicker here to get any good coverage going on. Done. Next. Okay, so these pieces just need the bottom. Let's get all three of those while we're at it. I'm angling this to the light so I can see where everything's getting wet. I want to keep that consistent across the board. In a lot of ways, this is just like painting a regular full-size wall. I imagine a lot of you have probably done that. And when you go with one coat, and it looks good at first, and then you step back after it's dried, and you can see, well, it's a little weak here, a little strong there. I might have to redo that piece. And that's it for 1706, it looks like. Alright, so let's clean this up and transfer to B. Actually, this is going to take a while to dry. Maybe I'll switch over to... well, let's take a look around.